you start with a family. You have to decide on how you're going to fund it. If you're one of the lucky ones that can just afford it by paying from your own salary, great, I'm so happy for you. But most people don't have the extra money available in their budget, and they need to save for an event like this, for any life event, but having a baby is the topic for today. You need to know what it is that you need to prepare yourself for, and I have made a little list to help you. So the first thing you need to know that you can afford is maternity clothes. So if you are not pregnant yet, these are the things that you first need to save towards. Then there will be expenses during your pregnancy, and there will be expenses after the pregnancy. But you can obviously do this in phases. So before you start a family, you need to know that you'll need money for maternity clothes. That's quite expensive, and a lot of people can't continue to wear their own normal clothes, and they need to buy either a bigger size or they need to buy some things. You get nice things these days that you can use just to extend your pants and stuff like that. So just be aware that your feet might even swell. You might need more comfortable shoes. I had to buy a whole size bigger shoe when I fell pregnant. So yes, consider the fact that there will be some clothing expenses, not just for the baby, but also for yourself. Think feeding bra and think things like that as well. Find out what they cost, go look at your size, go up a size or two, and see what the cost is so that you can prepare for that. You don't need a whole cupboard full of clothes because you're not going to wear them again unless you have 2-3 children. But yeah, you need some variety, especially if you're continuing to work and you still need to look a little presentable. The next thing is there will be doctor's visits. So before you start even, there will be doctor's visits already to see if everything's in order. You might need to take supplements, additional vitamins. If you're on a hospital plan only and you don't have a plan that provides for doctor's visits and medicine, this is something you'll have to pay cash for. Otherwise, you have to consider to upgrade the next year to a plan that does cover those expenses. But just remember, sometimes it's self-funded in any way, so you might as well just save for it yourself. The only nice thing about the upfront provision through a medical scheme is that they make it available for the whole year. While when you save in a savings account, you only have available what you've saved. The next thing is the baby room. If you don't have a baby room, you need to maybe move into a house that does have one. If you do have room for a baby, you obviously need to prepare that room, and you can't paint it just before the baby gets born because you need the fumes to subside a bit and things like that. It's also not good for you when you're pregnant if you are surrounded by paint fumes. So that's something you need to look at. There will be baby stuff that you'll need already when the baby is born. You'll get a lot of stuff at your stalk party, but yes, that will not always be applicable. You get a lot of duplicates, so make sure you have enough money to buy clothes and nappies and formula milk and medicine, and decide on what brand of bottles you want to use, car seat, pram, things like that. This is also something that you can save during the pregnancy as well. But yeah, beforehand, you need to know that this is something you're going to have to save towards. And then lastly, your car. Can your car accommodate a baby seat? Is it safe? Can your boot accommodate a big baby nappy bag and a pram? Do you need to maybe replace your car? And something you don't think about, I was one of the victims of not thinking ahead when it came to starting a family. Where you live will limit your school choices. So if you're planning on starting a family, you might want to consider the fact that you might have to move if there's a specific school you want your child to get in. So find out what the zones are, find out where the local schools are, and find out where, if they take kids from that residential area where you live. Otherwise, it might be a big surprise when it gets to daycare, and you have to, from there on, they already feed to some primary schools, and the primary schools feed certain high schools, so you kind of have to start right at the daycare already. So that is the beforehand. During your pregnancy, there are some different things you need to save for. You'll still have to save for doctor's visits because there will be scans and you'll have to visit a gynae. Make sure your gynae is covered by your medical aid and the hospital that they can operate in where you will be delivering your baby. So make sure of those things up front. And if you need to change the gynae, you can do it ahead of time. If you don't need to or want to, that you are prepared for the shortfalls there might be that your medical aid is not going to cover. Find that out up front so that it is not an additional stress for you at the birth when you get bills and things from the hospital, gynae, anaesthetist, pediatrician, all of those. Then also think about the immunizations. If your medical aid doesn't cover it, you can have it done at a public clinic and it will be very affordable. But if you want the private immunization, then it'll be thousands of rands. So go check what those immunizations are, find out what they cost, where you can have them done, because don't assume you can have them done at your doctor's office. Most doctors do not give immunizations. So just find that out beforehand and determine the cost, because that could be quite a thing to consider from a medical expense point of view. Baby clothes and nappies, that's obvious. We've mentioned it for the before as well, because you can never have enough and they grow, so constantly buying clothes until they're bigger, and then the rate of purchasing clothes becomes a little slower. Then your family food, your cooking. So if you're the main cook in the house, it will be hard for you to keep up with cooking for the whole family and preparing baby food separately, especially when they start to eat. So think about that. If your husband's not a real cook, then think about easy solutions. Go investigate things like where they deliver ready-made meals at your home, just to relieve you some stress. Ask those grandmothers to bake some things like frozen things like macaroni and cheese and lasagnas and things like that you can stock up in your fridge. Just during your pregnancy when you're tired and you need to eat healthy, and even after the pregnancy when the baby's still small, to just help you out a little bit with that. Also, if you're lucky and you don't get morning sickness, great for you. If you're like me and you have your whole first semester in morning sickness and all you can eat is anything that has no flavor in it. So don't prepare too much food, because you might be one of those that can't eat everything. You first want to feel it out, but prepare some, because your husband will still be hungry. And the other kids, if there are other kids. Then during your pregnancy, especially if you're working, you might, due to hormones, go through some tough times mentally. And prepare for the fact that you might need to be able to talk to someone. So most of the hospitals and even your gynae can refer you to somebody that can help you specifically for pregnancy and post-maternity blues, like they say. So it's not a bad idea to talk to someone that you know can understand and can give you some advice and tips and how to deal with work stress and maybe separation anxiety, not just for the baby, but also for you when you need to take them to a creche or leave them at home. So how to deal with that. It might be harder than you think, and it will be good to have someone there. And these are typically the kind of things that will have to come from your pocket if you are, for instance, on a hospital plan only. So find these things out beforehand so that it's not a surprise. After your pregnancy is actually where the real expenses start. Apart from the immunizations that are already mentioned, you might not be back to your size clothes yet, so you'll be in between sizes. So think of wardrobe. You might not be feeling your best, so you might want to buy something to make yourself feel a bit better. And I don't say it's right, but if it's going to help with the mood, do it. Just don't go overboard. Just consider that might be an expense. Then it's really nice to play dolls. So you are going to want to buy every baby clothing you see. That's so cute. Be wise. Don't buy it if it's just the right size, and consider the seasons and consider the rate that the baby is growing. There will still be medicine expenses. There will be follow-up visits for you at the gynae as well as for your baby at the pediatrician. Then there will be things like that you have to consider if you did not get sterilized during the pregnancy, if there's a vasectomy in the pipeline, how the medical aid covers that. Things like that you need to consider for after, if it's the final child. Okay. Then the daycare, there will be expenses for that, clearly. You have to decide, when are you going back to work? Maybe you don't get the full maternity leave, and maybe it's not paid, and maybe it's not paid in full, and maybe it's just a certain amount and you want to take a longer leave, and then it's unpaid leave. So you have to think of things like that, what your cash flow will be, and that you'll have additional expenses over and above the fact that you might not have full cash flow. And don't bargain on that UIF claim because they take a bit long. You might be back at work already before you receive the money. So yes, just think ahead, plan ahead, find these things out so that it doesn't stress you while you're pregnant. And you know already what are your plan A's, plan B's, and even plan C's if needed. Then once the baby's there and you've got the daycare and you know the costs and you've thought of all these things, then you need to start thinking about things like you have to update your will. Because you need to appoint trustees for a children's trust, perhaps. You need to appoint guardians over your child if something would happen to you and your husband simultaneously. So think about that and have it done. Might not cost money, but it could, depending on who you use to help you with the amendments of your will. Then you also need to review your life cover, your disability cover, your severe illness cover, because suddenly you have an additional financial dependent. And if something happens to one of you in your household and one of your incomes, then you still need to provide for that person remaining, yourself and then the child. So think to have that reviewed, and it will have an expense connected to it because it'll probably involve an increase in cover, which will have an increase in price. Then also you have to start saving early for education because those costs are astronomical. And yes, it's a far ahead and you don't know if they're going to study. That's why I wouldn't advise a policy. They're cheap and it's easy because you know you got it and it's going there and be paid by the time that they study. But you're bound by many of these options, not all of them. So just find out that you have options if they choose not to study in South Africa or they choose not to study at all. Then you have a problem if you sit with a policy you've been paying for 18 years. So I prefer saving if you can, because then if the child changes their mind or that things don't go according to plan, you still have access to those funds and you can use it for something else. Think of things as well like trip farewell, the dress. Think of things like a car, vehicle, driving licenses that needs to be done, and then over and above the education costs, find out your closest university, what they charge more or less, and think about the fact that it won't just be the expense of the course and the books, it will also be the expense of whether they live, their residence, as well as the expense of food and pocket money and things like that. So yeah, just ask around a little bit, start early enough to save towards that so that you don't have to take out a loan necessarily. You can try and steer away from debt if possible. I hope these tips helped.